you very much, Dr. Dora Carrion and Mariano Cerca, for inviting me to approach this vibrant community. It's a pleasure to be here. This talk is about soils, soil governance, and then digital soil mapping. The purpose is to develop an effort to increase collaboration, but also to increase the quality, quantity, and accessibility of soil information to any interested user or person. Thank you very much to my PhD student, Carlos Arroyo. This work is part of his PhD research. And thank you very much to Dr. Jose Sarucán, Jorge Larson, Dr. Rendowski, and his wife, Isela Calderon, because thanks to them and their support at the beginning, we are here doing what we do now, and it's a pleasure for us to be here. Also, thank you to our funding sources. Soil information is increasingly needed to support sustainable soil management. Sustainable soil management is urgently needed to stop and mitigate the negative effects of land degradation at the global scale. Soil information is also useful to constrain Earth system models and to support studies about ecological forecasting in the near or in the long term. And this is because soils play a pivotal role in what we call the critical Earth zone. It's a conceptual delimitation from the top of the vegetation to the limit of the water table in soils, and we can see in Cuatro Cienegas, which is plain, basically there is a high diversity of environments that may be the reason why this is the hotspot of biodiversity, as you guys have been describing all this morning. Soils are complex systems formed by different layers, organized in layers with different thickness and different physical, chemical, and biological properties that are the result of soil forming processes, which are additions, losses, translocations, and movement of substances that exist in the soil and that they participate in some biochemical cycle. The result is a high diversity of soil conditions and soil types, which is a big challenge to understand the ecological significance of each of these different soil conditions. A big challenge is that soil information is extremely expensive and time-consuming, and there will be no funding source for us to go and sample soils across the 200 square kilometers of the entire valley to support sustainable soil management at the local level. And this is important because soils can vary significantly at short distances, and they also vary with depth, and these are dynamic systems. And enable monitoring systems for soil ecological functions is not easy as cake. Another big issue is that existing soil information relies on tacit knowledge of a soil expert that is always in the field interpreting the patterns of soil variability. So once we lost the soil scientist, he gets retired or something, how can we recover all that tacit knowledge? How can we maintain the knowledge that we have in that head useful for other persons? And as I said, it's very difficult to map by hand an entire valley, such as Cuatro Cienegas. This is a soil type map of INEGI, which is useful to understand the general soil conditions in the valley. But what we want is to describe the functional variability of soils within these soil units in a quantitative fashion. We did this analysis yesterday with data from our academic secretary in discussion, just to highlight the trend of minimum temperatures across the entire area. Interestingly, is significant and positive, slightly significant in the red areas. So the minimum temperatures are getting warmer, and this is a pressing condition that is changing the ecology of this amazing place. It's very important to understand the condition of the soil and the capacity to sustain life, because we are, we get back, it's nearly 23 hectares per minute, the rate of land desertification at the global scale. And that is why we need to join forces and act now. From an institutional perspective, Valeria presented this plot earlier. So 6 of 9 planetary boundaries are transgressed, and most of these boundaries are directly related with soils systems. In Mexico, most of the soil degradation is associated with the expansion of agricultural land. We can see here at the Great Plains in the central north part, the highlands in southern Mexico are the ecoregions most affected by agricultural intensification cycles and expressing higher trends of soil degradation. Nearly the half of North American deserts are also degraded, according to recent studies, synthesis studies by Santini et al. It is a big challenge to understand the impacts in the soils of conversion systems to productive systems, traditional agriculture, rain-fed agriculture, abandoned lands, intensive agriculture in arid environments, intensive agriculture of avocado production in central Mexico, papaya growth in the Pacific coast, deforestation in Yucatan Peninsula, a beautiful place, Cuatro Cienegas, but the alfalfa that is consuming all the water. How can we predict all of those effects at the same time and with a national perspective? It is what we want shortly. Are we taking blind decisions? Maybe. That is why probably is a reason why over 70% of soils are degraded at the national level. And these are evaluations that are old, nearly 3 decades old. So we expect that this trend is not recovering. Actually, it's more pressure. Social conflicts are also present in Mexico, and they are very common. They are also very directly related with soil variability. Social conflicts reflect that there is a big need of improved soil governance in the country. This is a topic of environmental ethics and environmental justice, and it has to do with every person, every institution, every practice that is causing the current status of soil security. It is interesting to see that in Cuatro Cienegas there is one person, Hector is the name, I believe. So what is the institutional perspective? No? How can we empower him? But it is a big challenge. It's not a matter of one person. It should be a full group of institutions that may be leading this. Okay, so for improving soil governance, we need sustainable soil management, and for that we need soil data and soil information. We need also to recognize that soil degradation is not because the majority of people, it's because a very little group of people have a lot of money, a lot of power, and because soils, well, in soils we produce 99% of calories we eat. That is why we need to consider these inequities and social constraints. The same with water or carbon emissions. Most of emissions is thanks to a powerful proportion of people. It's very low, very small, and most of people do not emit carbon. The same with water here. Most of water is used by large companies, and less water is used by people taking decisions in territories. So we need to empower users with soil knowledge. And this effort is about getting the data and translate some useful information discovering knowledge that hopefully will be useful for everybody, not only for the big enterprises that actually pay the best money for soil information. We need to start thinking in digital territories and assess in a holistic way productive landscapes. If we ask ourselves what is the best information available, we can read the paper of Carlitos, his PhD paper here. But it's interesting that we observe that in Mexico there's no data sharing cultures, there is no good practices for data sharing or data archiving. So we didn't identify, for example, 1 million data sites with soil information, but there is no traceability of methods or transparency in metadata, so we cannot use them if we don't know what is the source of this data. It seems, at the national scale, after a synthesis effort of Carlos, that it is a soil-rich data-rich country at the national scale, or at least compared with the countries below the imaginary north. But if we analyze the density of soil profiles every 10 kilometers, we start seeing important gaps of information. You can see like Andona, the many areas that are data-free, several irrigation districts in the north, etc. And when we go to the scale that is relevant for taking decisions at the local scale, we don't see anything. There is no soil profiles every 1 kilometer, there is no data for us to take decisions. So probably, yes, there is no soil governance because we are taking blind decisions about we care about our soil. And that is why we follow a conceptual framework in digital soil mapping. It's a branch of soil cartography. Soil cartography is important to understand the response of soils to global environmental change, to understand or predict the response of soils to changes in land use or climatic trends. On digital soil mapping, a soil property of interest for a specific soil depth for a specific point in space and for a specific period of time can be predicted as a function of the soil forming environment. This side of the equation. We fed this side of the equation with remote sensing, digital terrain analysis, climate data, thematic maps, every factor that is a part of the soil forming environment. This is the data that we have, the limited and sparse data that we have. And the F is the world of machine learning and artificial intelligence, which is a new science, relatively, with the main question of how the human brain works. And that is the high complexity. The brain is similar to the high complexity of ecological functions in soil systems. To represent the soil forming environment, we gather over 120 layers of information related to climate, organisms, relief, parent material, age, and we consider the geostatistics, the spatial structure of soil variability, following this simplification of our conceptual model that is also able to account for an error term in the function that is going to couple both sides of the equation. Methodology is a modeling strategy. We get the soil data. This is the soil properties that we are targeting. We define a cube of environmental information to represent the soil forming environment. We develop a recursive filter elimination technique to assess variable importance using a fast and furious but powerful and tree-based machine learning algorithm as a baseline. Random forest is an ensemble of many regression trees based on a resampling technique known as bagging. Then we create models with this algorithm, we make predictions and we validate the predictions using independent residuals to get robust estimations of error. We perform or explore multiple models with limited data in the region, at the national level, with the North American deserts only, and etc. This is the available data from INEGI and other sources available in in the valley. We are making this database accessible to everybody. This is the variability of one important property, soil organic carbon. As you can see, these are low levels of soil organic carbon. There are some hotspots maybe in agricultural areas that are carbon rich, but we don't have good representation right now of these areas with the data that we have inside the valley. This is the general trend of soil depth variability, and I just want to call your attention here in the carbon. Soil organic carbon here is not important, not because it's too much, it's critical because it's too little, and it's protecting the carbonate-rich rocks from the exposure to the direct environment. So if we remove this carbonate, we are going to accelerate carbon losses from soils to the atmosphere thanks to the dissolution of the carbonate-rich rock. That is why very important to preserve it now. These are some of the most important predictors: elevation, NDVI describing plant productivity, the gradient of precipitation available, and the coordinates are also good indicators of soil variability. We validate our predictions. Soil organic carbon is relatively good, moderate prediction ability from low prediction ability to the 15 to 30 centimeters, but we have good prediction capacity, at least for the surface. This is the general prediction of soil organic carbon in the map. Because this organic carbon is fixed by unique consortia of microbial communities, it opens a lot of potential collaboration and research opportunities, I believe. So we hope these maps are useful to escalate or to scale the data we take at the one-to-one scale to the entire valley. Electrical conductivity as an indicator of soil salinity. It's also very important to constrain earth system models and to plan agricultural activities. Cation exchange capacity is also a variable that we predict in the entire valley, very directly related with the activity of the soil and the capacity of the soil to exchange nutrients with plants. Sand variability, very important to understand water holding capacity and drainage condition. We can see the general trend here. And also for soil organic carbon fixation, the amount of clay in the topsoil of the valley. You are seeing the predictive maps and the range of uncertainty in the model predictions in this site. Also predict the silt as another important textural variable. pH also to understand the legacy effects of intensive agriculture, for example. Soil depth, very important for many land uses and territorial activities. And we hope, this is repeated, this information may be useful for you, for everybody, to better understand with a wall-to-wall perspective the diversity of biological entities in the valley, but also to enable digital soil assessment, to enable soil monitoring systems, and to predict future conditions under specific strategies. Large challenges that we want to contribute to overcome about soil variability have to do with the limited understanding of soil properties and processes. There is also a very inadequate integration of soil information into decision-making processes. But there are now examples of policy-relevant research that can help us to better use soil information. We are building a data site, and Carlos is preparing a second publication of his PhD. But if you want to explore the maps and you want to download them and start seeing, you can just take this barcode or take a picture, and we will be happy to share any information with any interested user for the sake of soil governance. Thank you very much.
There's time for questions. Hola. Felipe has really did a lot of profiles of nutrients
and how the soils of Cuatro Cienegas in the agricultural plots versus the non-agricultural plots behave. And he found that the soil is actually really very poor, and agricultural exhausts the soil really fast. And so I don't know if there's any way to incorporate whatever Felipe has been doing for 20 years with your model.
Yes, thank you very much. And that is probably the main take-home message is that I didn't. My intention here is to share the information and to, with principles of recognizing intellectual property and with principles of respect, to provide a statistical benchmark that can be improved as new data or new covariates become available. That's the beauty of this system, that can get updated and reduce error if more data is available. Thank you very much, Valerie.
Another question?
Hello, thank you so much for the talk. I think it's kind of important, this part of the soil, because personally I can never know nothing about soil. So, water is almost not seen, so the land and soil I think is even more hard to see. They worry about on there. It's possible to integrate into the mathematics part for the models the effect of microorganisms in soil in order to improve the amount of good soil, because it was my understanding that there is a good soil part and another rocks that should be protected, for not to degrade. But as far as I know, in some biological systems like composta, I don't know how to say that in English. You can degrade some things into soil. So these biological microorganisms could be integrated into the modeling. That's my question. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. The question is, can we integrate data of microbial activity in the model to improve our interpretation of how soils are working? And the answer is yes. As much as we can fit the model with the dynamic information of the soil, we can understand how fast the soil is changing, which is a more difficult question to answer than how is soil doing now. And also, many experiments, they simulate, for example, if we can guarantee an increase of organic matter of 5 or 1 to 2 or 3%, given these environmental conditions, what is the potential of this soil to store carbon, for example, or mitigate the carbon losses due to increased soil respiration? Yeah, it will be very good, but as I said, soil data is very expensive and time-consuming, and what we have to represent soil at the national or regional scale is actually very, very limited.
So it's also potentially for diseases and spreading of mosquitoes or something like that. These kind of predictions.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
It's also possible to predict or to see if the land will be a niche for the growing of some insects or something like that can spread disease or pathogenic bacteria or something like that.
Well, yeah, there is a sister discipline in sciences that is ecological niche modeling, and actually soil information is also useful and very useful for understanding the geographical distribution of biological data. For example, plagues, mosquitoes, very related to the inundation patterns, for example. Thank you.
I think Cebeta has done a lot of efforts in soil management, and they have lombricomposta, and they are trying to do sustainable agriculture here in the school. So I think we need to support every effort that the kids of Cebeta can do, because whatever they do here, it spreads to other family clubs.
Thank you very much for the comment. Early in our careers, we were very worried for publishing a lot of papers, but actually now it's more important for us to do this type of relationships. And if there's people from Cebeta here, we're very happy to talk, to build capacities, and exchange experiences. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Mario. That's a very powerful